say to America is be true to what you said on paper. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right.
And now for our feature presentation.
Balls Deep with Devin and Jovan.
All right. It's recording. All right. All right. That brings us to our main event. We're going to be talking about UFC Fight Night 176 main event and UFC 250's main card. We're going to start with Burns versus Woodley from UFC Fight Night 176. Devin?
To start off, Gilbert Burns, it was a super impressive fight by him. He ultimately just established himself as the real deal in a sense, because like he called Woodley out. He had something to prove, and he stepped up to the challenge and kind of handled his business. I mean, he dominated a motivated former champion in Woodley from bell to bell. Like I can't even remember a part of the fight where Woodley actually had control. Like Burns just seemed to be on his ass from the get-go. Burns has been on a tear for a while now. Like he improved to his win streak to 6 fights. He's won 8 of his last 9 across 2 different weight classes. This just was a shutout performance against Woodley, and it kind of just makes it hard to argue that he doesn't deserve to contend for the welterweight championship next, which, as we know now, like it was announced or officially announced today that he will be fighting Usman at UFC 251 on Fight Island due to the contract negotiations with Jose Masvidal not falling through. But whereas Tyron Woodley, he just hasn't looked like himself in the past 2 fights, honestly, against Usman and Burns. I mean, credit to Usman and Burns for kind of getting him out of his comfort zone. But like Burns swarmed Woodley in the beginning of round 1, and you could see like in his body language, like he was kind of in over his head after like his layoff. But like with his experience and championship mindset, you kind of have to give him the benefit of the doubt of bouncing back in situations like that. But it just didn't happen. Like he just seemed defeated before the last bell even rung. I mean, I hope this isn't the last that we see of Woodley moving forward. I mean, he should be more motivated more than ever, or he should be motivated more than ever moving forward. I mean, just hopefully the turnaround for his next fight isn't as long as the gap between the Usman fight and the Burns fight, just so that he can bounce back to the championship fighter that we like know him to be. Like, but in regards to his next opponent, I'd love for him to still fight someone ranked within the top 10 of the division. Someone like Michael Chiesa or Leon Edwards, who are currently ranked 8 and 4. I mean, both fighters are respected fighters. And ultimately, like wins against either opponent would help boost his name to be in title contention. And both fighters are fighters that he has yet to face. So if he does put on an impressive show, then he might be back in the conversations for the title in the near future.
Yeah, I don't feel like I have much to say on Burns. I mean, the guy looked amazing. Like you said, he's on a fight win streak. I believe you said 6 fights now.
Yeah.
He won practically every second of the fight. Yeah, like I said, he looked amazing. Clearly deserving of a title shot, and like you said, as we know now, it's scheduled with Usman July 11th. So I think that's going to be a great fight. He's looked great. I think he'll be a great challenge for Usman for the title, and I can't wait for that fight.
Yes.
As for Woodley, get him out of here. No, no. But Woodley, I don't know. Like you said, he hasn't looked like himself. I hate to say it, but I just rather not see him fight anymore. I'd rather just see him retire if he's going to continue to look like that. Obviously, he was a great champion, but for him to come out and say that he felt great because he looked off. For him, and we both saw he looked terrible, but for him to say, that he felt great and it wasn't the same Usman fight in which he kind of just felt out of it, for him to say that he felt great, I just feel like is enough for me to be like, oh, how the fuck? Because you didn't look great. And if that's you feel great, how are you supposed to compete anymore at that level? It almost seems like he just doesn't want to fight anymore. He doesn't.
Like he lost the drive.
Doesn't look like that same Woodley. He doesn't have that drive. Like I said, for you to go out and say that it wasn't the same as last time. I didn't feel great last time. I'm good this time. So I just, had a bad fight. If you didn't look great, I don't know how you felt great. And I don't know how you can, feel like you still want to fight going forward if you're going to continue to fight that way. I mean, he has a lot to figure out. So, I mean, maybe it is just to hang him up. Maybe he just needs some newfound motivation. But like you said, obviously it's going to be somebody in the top 10 if he does fight again.
Yeah.
It's Tyron Woodley. He'll probably fight a guy, like you said, Chiesa, or even, I don't know. It's just tough for me to even want to continue to watch Tyron Woodley fight like that.
I mean, if he's going to continue to fight like this, you're right. It's best that he just hangs it up. But fighters go on these kind of stints all the time where they go on a losing streak and they're just bound to bounce back. They still got it, but they just got to find or dig deep and find that newfound motivation, like you said, to kind of keep the fire going and that love for fighting going. I mean, Woodley, it would suck to see him go. I'd rather him go out on good terms than losing like that because it was just terrible. But he has to change something up, whether that's just his preparation or how he approaches certain fights. Because, like you said, he felt great. He felt the best he's ever felt, and it wasn't going to be the same old Woodley from the Usman fight, but he actually looked worse, in my opinion. But credit to Burns because Burns really just went out and did what he had to do, and he probably Woodley honestly might have looked worse because of how good Burns looked. Burns pretty much had a perfect fight. It was kind of hard to pick a flaw from that fight from Burns. He literally controlled it from start to finish.
Yeah, like you said, I don't mean it to take away from Burns at all. I mean, he fought great. And same with Usman. Usman had fought great against Wood. But at the same time, it's he was a great champion. I'm not saying that he's done, but he's 38. I mean, if Burns was that good, you're going to have to compete with that guy at some point again. You're going to have to compete with Usman at some point again. How much more can you change? How much more can you switch up? How much more can you add or take away from your game plan to beat these guys? I mean, like I said, he's 38. I mean, he's getting up there in age. He doesn't look completely there while he's fighting. He doesn't look like he has that motivation anymore, that drive. When you get to that age, especially in a combat sport like, UFC or mixed martial arts. I just feel like it's better to hang him up because I don't feel like there's much he can tweak on his game plan or do in the gym that's gonna help him compete with guys like Burns and Usman.
I think we both can come to an agreement that Tyron Woodley, get your shit together.
Yeah, step that shit up.
Yeah, step that shit up.
You are now tuned in to Balls Deep Podcast, brought to you by the streamers of S-Class and Take Flight Productions.
Well, with that, we're gonna move on to the UFC 250 main card. Going into this this pay-per-view, it was truly, I thought it was an underrated card, because there wasn't that much big names on the card, but I was truly impressed with how it turned out. It was a great card, and a great way to start off the card with the Sean O'Malley versus Eddie Winland fight. Am I right, Jovan?
Yeah, it was a good card. For Sean O'Malley and Wineland, I thought Sean O'Malley was impressive as always. Undefeated fighter, very young, great talent. Exciting to watch because, as we saw, he had an amazing knockout where he just walked off because it was that clean. So there's not much to say on that. It was a pretty quick fight. But I think a lot of people wanted him to get a ranked opponent or a big name before this fight. So especially now after the result of this fight, I think we'll see him jump into the top 15, more specifically the top 10. I think he'll make that leap considering he's been doing so well. He's undefeated, knockout after knockout. It's kind of undeniable at this point. So I think they'll give him a guy like Pedro Munoz or Jimmy Rivera or even former champion Dominic Cruz, who is actually technically, even though he just got a title shot, I believe technically ranked number 9, and which would be a great test for Sean O'Malley. But I'd probably lean towards Munoz or Rivera, just considering that obviously Dominic Cruz is, one of the best fighter ever, probably the best bantamweight champion ever. So they might hold off on a big fight like that. I understand why the UFC hasn't really tossed him the wolves like people wanted. They've rushed other fighters out before in the past, and it kind of burned them because those fighters ended up losing, and just their name doesn't kind of hold the same weight afterwards. So I kind of understood why the UFC has waited as long as it did to throw him a ranked opponent or a big name. But it's kind of impossible not to at this point with what he's been doing in the cage, beating guys left and right and knocking knockouts as easy as he did on Saturday. So I think we'll see something pretty big in the future for him.
I mean, I can agree that he definitely looked impressive. This was my introduction to Sean O'Malley. I didn't really know much about him because I know he was suspended or dealt with violation in the past. So, but he has knocked out. He has had I think a round 1 knockout in his past 2 fights. And yes, they've been unranked opponents, but they've been good opponents at that. There were tough opponents, really no easy fight. Like they weren't give me fights. And he's definitely went out and shown what he can do, honestly. There were 2 great, impressive knockouts. It was just cool to just see him knock him out and turn around like halfway as he's falling. Like, this guy's done.
It was like a no-doubter.
Yeah, it was cool too because like he faked he hit him with a move, and then he faked it the same move again, like a faked an uppercut, and then fucking clobbered him. And Wineland, like it felt like he was trying to fight to close his mouth because his jaw was just fucking smacked open. But
I believe what you're talking about is he faked the right, came across with a
Yeah.
straight left, and then came back across with a right cross.
yeah,
Over
so
the top.
it was dope. It was dope. Definitely dope. I mean, I can see where you're saying where like with his 2 past performances to bring him to the top 10 guy. I don't see it happening just because I feel like the UFC is going to kind of gradually push him into the picture until it's pretty much undeniable. 'Cause although I'd like to see him honestly face Cody Garbrandt after like both their performances on this card. I don't think it'll happen just because it's more of a lose-lose situation on Garbrandt's part. But with the Sean O'Malley, I do think that a good opponent for him moving forward would be Marlon Vera. I know he was supposed to fight Marlon Vera before he got suspended, and that was last year. Marlon Vera is currently ranked, I think, 15. So he's at the low. He's still a ranked opponent, but he's just at the lower end of it. His last fight, he actually lost to in a controversial call to the number 14th fighter. So either the 14th Song Yudong, which is number 14, or Marlon Vera would be good opponents. But I personally think Marlon Vera would be great because they were supposed to fight in the past, and now it would be a wave or his introduction to the top 15. So maybe, but with Yudong, he hasn't lost since 2016, although he should have lost against Vera on their Fight Night card fight because it was controversial. A lot of people do think Vera won that fight. So either one, I think, would be a great introduction to the top 15. It won't be long before O'Malley is within the top 10 of the division. The division just seems to be stacked at this point. And in regards to you mentioning Dominic Cruz, that would be very interesting fight, because if he were to beat Dominic Cruz, that's a big name to put on your resume. Or even I think I don't know how to pronounce his name, so God forbid me. But Uriah Faber. I know, like he's technically like retired, but he came out of retirement. I think it was last year to fight like 2 fights. And he won his very first one, but then got knocked out his very next. That would be another big name to put on Sean O'Malley's resume too, if he could actually pull off a win.
Now moving to the next fight, which was Neil Magny, came out with the decision. What do you think about that fight? What do you think's next for Magny?
So the Magny Martin fight, it wasn't a terrible fight, but it was the worst fight on the main card. And that's just because Magny didn't really look that impressive in that fight. I mean, he got the win. That's all that really matters. But he didn't really look all that impressive to me. Like, he didn't really win in convincing fashion. But he is 2-0 since returning to action. And it looks like he's looking to jump back into the top 15 of the welterweight division. And he is deserving of a top 15 opponent. So maybe someone like Michael Chesa, which I'm pretty sure I just butchered his last name again, but he's ranked number 8. He called him out, but like Magny called Chesa out because he wants to get his hands on him like many other fighters want to do. But I don't think that will be realistic to jump and fight the number 8 fighter. I think someone more realistic right away would be a surging Jeff Neal or an experienced fighter like Anthony Pettis, both of which are top 15 fighters, but they're ranked at the lower end of the top 15, and they'll ultimately give him a test and see if he's worthy of being a top 15 fighter. I think either win will honestly bump it, or a win against either opponent would honestly bump him up to the top 15. The fight against Jeff Neal, I think, would probably be best because it'll give us an answer on whether Jeff Neal is the real deal. No pun intended. But it also see where Magny is within his career as well.
Yeah, kind of touch on what you said quickly. It was obviously he came out with the win decision, but it was less than impressive. It was, it was a good fight. It was a close fight, but he didn't really win in a fashion in which he made a statement. So I believe Magny is just outside of the 15, out of 15 right now. So I think I was kind of stuck in between whether or not I believe they'll move him into the top 15 or whether he'll move, if at all, after, his fight. But I think that his next opponent will be just inside of the top 15. Like I said, Keita, very unrealistic. I don't think that's a good fight for him at all.
Yeah, I mean, he called him out.
Especially, yeah.
I think the fight could happen down the road, just not right now.
Yeah, down the road, but especially after, like I said, less than impressive fight. He didn't make a statement enough win to get a guy like he. But I think somebody just inside of the top 15, like Lawler or Damian Maia, or even Cerrone, who I've said previously is the gatekeeper, and I believe it's just at the top 15. And we know Cerrone fights left and right with, and he's always got quick turnaround. So I think that'd be a great fight for him, just because a guy as experienced as Cerrone would be able to give him a good test, even though his rank doesn't really show how good he is. Yeah. So I think Cerrone at 15 would be a great fight for him.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I mentioned Anthony Pettis, just because Cerrone just came off a fight against Anthony Pettis and lost. So Anthony Pettis would be a good test for him, just because he's just at the cusp as well. However, he is ranked compared to Magny. He's more so on the outside looking in. Yeah. But it'll be a test to see if he's worthy of being a top 15 fighter. Now moving on to Aljamain Sterling versus Corey Sandhagen. This fight ended quickly in the first round by submission. Aljamain Sterling walked away with the victory in impressive fashion, I should say. So what do you think's next for Sterling, Jovan?
Like you said, he got a very impressive win against the number Sand. Very impressive win. He looked amazing. He got a sub, like I believe in the first round.
Yeah.
So for me, before this card, I was kind of disappointed when this fight was announced, because I felt personally that Sterling had already did enough to deserve a title. I think somebody like Aldo should have been on the outside looking in, just barely.
I agree.
With his very close decision loss before. So for me, I didn't really – obviously, I liked him in this fight, but I just didn't really see – it didn't seem fair to me that he wasn't, fighting for that championship against Peter Yan. So for me now, after seeing him get such an impressive win against Sandhagen, I feel like it has to be a title shot. Nothing less. It almost feels like he'd be robbed if he had to get through another opponent. I mean, I believe he's on a 5-win streak now. So it's tough because you have these guys fighting for a title soon. So obviously, if he wants to fight for that title, there'd be a little of a wait. Only other opponent I could think of is former champion Garbrandt, who just got a win on the same card, which is very likely. That was a fight that Garbrandt needed to win, and he did in impressive fashion, which we'll get to later. So that's another person I could see him fighting. But like I said already, it wouldn't seem fair to me if his next fight is not a title shot between whoever wins Yan and Aldo. I think that's the only fight to make for him at this point. He's done more than enough to deserve it.
I agree. I mean, I agree that he definitely has a better case for fighting Peter Yan for the vacant bantamweight title over Jose Aldo. I mean, Aldo is currently ranked number 6 in the division, and he lost his one and only bantamweight fight, which to me doesn't really show like why he's deserving of a title shot besides just his name brand. And Sterling, before this fight, already proved that he was worthy of a championship opportunity, but now even more so now after his impressive win against the number 4 fighter in the division in the first round. I mean, so I agree that he's deserving of a title shot next, and he should fight the winner of Yan versus Aldo. But another match I can see happening would be a rematch between him and Marlon Moraes, who's currently ranked number 1 within the division. That match would ultimately be a number 1 contender match to see who fights the winner of Peter Yan and Jose Aldo, for the simple fact that Moraes actually beat Jose Aldo in the past, or his last fight, and he was supposed to fight Yan already in June before Cejudo decided to retire, and they decided to put together the Yan Aldo fight for the vacant title. And I know Moraes and Sterling fought in 2017, and Moraes actually beat him by knockout in round 1. So to get a rematch and kind of redeem himself, but also getting a number 1 contender opportunity if he does win would probably be best. If he doesn't get a championship opportunity right after this, just for the simple fact that I feel like they both are deserving of a title opportunity, and both of them don't really deserve to have to fight again to prove why they deserve it. But in this case, this would be like the best case scenario for either fighter.
Yeah, I like I said, for me, I feel like Sterling's just done more than enough to earn that title shot. I don't think that he should have to go through another fight, although I wouldn't be surprised if it happens. And like I said, it kind of moves me into Garbrandt's fight. He got the KO win right at the end of, I believe, round two. And he looked like the old Garbrandt. Was always very good at moving. His movement speed is always been at the top. Very good at not taking hits. He was seemingly able to keep his emotions in check throughout the fight, which was kind of his biggest problem in his losses. He wasn't able to do that, especially considering the history that he had. That being said, the bantamweight division, it's so stacked right now at the top, and that's why it's so tough for these fights. Garbrandt being former champion, that win kind of already puts him in the conversation to fight for a title. But I wouldn't be surprised if they do Sterling Garbrandt, and then whoever wins that gets that title shot against Yan Aldo. So that's kind of why I said, Sterling and Garbrandt, those fights kind of just mesh perfectly in terms of us talking about them and where they fall in the weight classes and the time in which they happened. They kind of go hand in hand. And that's why I say it's kind of almost unavoidable. I feel like Sterling deserves it, but it's as if the cards just lined up perfectly to give the UFC opportunity to line that matchup up and then have your championship fight between the two winners of Yan Aldo and Sterling Garbrandt. So I think that might be the direction it's headed in.
I agree. I mean, the bantamweight division is stacked, and they got recognition on this card. Just they look super impressive all throughout. I still don't understand why Cejudo left. I mean, all these matchups would have been great to see with Cejudo. I still don't think he's going to end up retiring. But speaking about the card, Garbrandt did look impressive. He looked like the old Garbrandt, like you said. I seen flashes of how he looked when he fought Dominic Cruz in this fight, because I was really, while I was watching this fight, I was so impressed by his speed and quickness, and I was literally praising him for it. And then, bam, he knocked him out at the buzzer, basically, or at the horn, like, and it was in so quick fashion, like it was unbelievable. Like it was knockout of the night. I believe he got knockout of the night. He looked super impressive. His speed was ridiculous. And I know he's itching to get back into the title picture because he did call out Peter Yan after in his post-fight conference. But I don't think he's deserving of one just yet, just coming off of a 3-fight losing streak and getting knocked out, I think, in all 3. But being a former champion, I do think that he will be going up within the top 5 after this win, and he's deserving of a title-worthy fight. So one that ultimately will get him into the title picture after. So someone like Marlon Moraes, like I had mentioned earlier, for Sterling, maybe as a number 1 contender, or even Corey Sandhagen, who actually lost to Sterling. Sandhagen, yeah, he looked bad. Well, he didn't look bad, but like he was on the bad end of the stick against Sterling because it ended fast. But I believe he has something to prove coming out of that fight. And with Moraes, him getting jerked around by the UFC and not getting a title fight, that would be a fight that would push Garbrandt into the title picture if he were to win that fight. Because I do believe Sterling is the most deserving of a title fight immediately. So I do think Garbrandt will be in the title picture soon. I'm happy to see him back. I'm happy to see him back to normal. I just feel like Moraes would probably be the best, or the fight I want to see against, have him fight for his sake. But if not, Sandhagen would be a close backup because, yes, he called out Peter Yan, but he'll get Peter Yan in the future if it pans out like I think it's going to, which would be Peter Yan wins at 251 and Garbrandt continues to wreak havoc on the division.
Yeah, I just to touch a little bit on Moraes. The thing that throws me off a little bit about Moraes and the reason I don't see him in any of those matchups is simply just based off the fact that he got a less than impressive, decision victory over Aldo that a lot of people said should have, in Aldo's favor. And before that, had a championship opportunity and lost by way of knockout to Cejudo.
Yeah.
So I feel like not that he can't earn a chance back, but he hasn't done enough recently to show the UFC, in my opinion, that he deserves to be in those opportunities. I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if they take Sandhagen, who just lost to Sterling, and I'd rather see that happen, Moraes over and Sandhagen over Moraes over Sterling. While I get that it'd be good opportunity for Sterling to kind of, get that win back and avenge that loss that he has, I just don't see where Moraes has done enough compared to Sterling has done for them to even be in the octagon at this point together.
Yeah, I agree that Sterling is the most deserving of a title shot. There's no question, especially being that Moraes just lost to Cejudo not that long ago. And yeah, his win against Aldo wasn't all that impressive, but if you give him the opportunity to fight someone like Garbrandt, who's on his way up again, who just fell within the rankings after his losing streak, if he were to win that fight, it'll put him back in the picture. So I think that's both him and Garbrandt would have something to prove, and which would ultimately make it a great fight because the winner would ultimately be in the playoff picture. Garbrandt wants to prove that he can do what he did on 250 again, and he's truly Cody 2.0. And Moraes is going to try to prove why he is deserving to be at the top of the division, and why the Aldo fight wasn't as convincing, or may not have been as convincing as it should have been.
Yeah, That makes sense. I definitely see that fight more so than I could see Mariah's versus Sterling for sure.
Yeah,
That'd be a great fight.
I mean, in regards to the Cody fight again, though, but it was just truly like impressive because his Rafael how do you pronounce the last name? Sunyao?
Asun Kao, I believe.
Well,
Asun Kao.
he's a tough fighter. It's definitely like hard to like look impressive in the octagon against someone that tough, and Garbrandt just looked flawless. I mean, and Sun Yao hasn't been knocked out, I believe, in at least 10 years, and the fact that Garbrandt was able to do that truly says a lot. I mean, that's why I think he shouldn't be fighting anyone outside the top 5 in his next fight. And that's truly why I picked Mariah's or Sandhagen, because Sterling, he's getting that title opportunity next. And then Peter Yan is already going to be fighting for the vacant title. So who's left within the top 5? I mean, he just beat Asunya, who was number 5, and now it's probably going to be his spot. So now, like, who else is he going to fight that's truly going to give him opportunity to be in the title picture where he wants to fight Peter Yan? Like, his options are limited at this point.
I agree. But either way you slice it, I think that division is amazing. It's a very good future. And a division full of champions that currently has no champion. So yeah. I guess we'll see where that goes.
And now we're going to move on to the main event of the evening. So that was Amanda Nunes versus Felicia Spencer. To me, Spencer didn't have a chance from the start. I felt like going into this fight, the only way Felicia Spencer had a chance of winning against Nunes was using her size to her advantage and taking her to the ground. But as you watch this fight, every time she tried to take her to the ground, Nunes would ultimately just reverse it and take her down instead. Like, Nunes just dominated this fight from start to finish, ultimately proving why she's the greatest women's fighter in UFC history. She's just dominated and cleaned out 2 weight divisions, which hasn't really happened in the past. I mean, she has, after cleaning out these divisions, she really has no one else to fight and nothing else to prove. So the only person I would like, or I'd be interested in seeing her fight, would be Valentina Shevchenko. I know they fought in the past twice already, both resulting in Nunes winning, but the last one was very close, and they fought at 135. And I think in order to fight again, 135 would probably be the most realistic option, and Valentina Shevchenko would honestly be the only opponent I think Nunes would be interested in dropping weight for. But I think since she has nothing to prove, and like for the rest of her career, and really she's wiped out these 2 divisions where like now they're kind of just scavenging for an opponent for her, I think if she does hypothetically fight Shevchenko again for the 3rd time, that she should drop down to 125 flyweight and go for something that's never been done, which would be the trifecta, and ultimately fight Shevchenko in her division at her weight for her title, and she'd be the only fighter to ever hold 3 titles in 3 different divisions simultaneously if she were to pull off the victory.
Yeah, I think ultimately there's really only one fight to make for Nunes. She's been, very impressive throughout her entire career. Obviously beat some of the best women fighters in the history of the sport. So I think, like you said, the only way to go about it is Valentina. There's really no other way to slice it. I think, like you said, she should probably go down and and uh and challenge her for her title at her weight. I don't know that she would hold the title in class as well. But I think it's the only fight to make at this point because she's pretty much beating everybody and badly, and the only person who's ever kept it close is Valentina. And especially a lot of people have said they do believe she should have won the second decision. Although, the only thing that really moves is the three people who decided it went to her. So ultimately, she did get the W, but I think the best chance at her being dethroned or given that loss is from Valentina. Um, Other than that, there's really no other opponent for her other than to go over to the men's division and start fighting the men and fucking them up because she's just.
Get a WWE storyline
I
going.
mean, she's eating everybody. She just fought. She just defended her title against a girl where she outstruck her, I believe, 132-70 total strikes.
It was terrible.
With 6 takedowns to 0. I mean, and you're fighting in a championship fight, and you don't even look like you belong there. No offense, because it's Nunes. That's how she makes almost everybody look. But it's just either Valentina or just go over men's and start fucking some of them up.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, there's no point in scavenging for opponents because all the opponents that you'll scavenge, like she's either beat already or those that she hasn't fought, it's too early for them, and you don't want to put them in that position to kind of mess up the future of the division or just by defeating their confidence. So I think Valentina is the only option next. Most likely it'll be at 135. Would I love for her to go to flyweight and fight for her belt and try to win 3 belts and hold them simultaneously? She'll be the first to do it. That would be super impressive, just as the rest of her career has been. Now, do I think it's likely? No. Dropping 20 pounds is going to be hard, especially for a female. But that's that. I mean, that's all we have for you today, folks. I mean, thank you for tuning in. As always, please like, follow, subscribe on all platforms. We're now available on iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and as before, we were available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And feel free to follow us on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We love you all. We appreciate your support, and we hope that you continue to follow us throughout our venture. And I hope you guys enjoyed. Jovan, do you have anything to add?
I just hope you guys enjoy watching our videos as much as we enjoy making them and talking about sports. It's what we love to do, and I'm pretty sure you're tuning in because it's what you love to listen to. So we hope that we're providing you a good experience while we discuss our opinions on sports. And as things roll on and we get things more situated and this podcast just gets better and better, we hope you're there to see it and follow us, and we appreciate all the support. Thank you.
Love you all.
Peace.
Deuces.
You're talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. We're talking about balls deep in love. I'm talking about balls deep. My boy's talking about balls deep. We're talking about balls deep in love.